man, sorry about that, everybody. I was doing a lesson and lost track of time. So we'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, you can post them. It should be below the video if you are on a smaller screen, or to the right of the video if you are on a larger screen, like a computer screen or something like that. All right, so we will start here with Greg T. I think, let me refresh this, make sure we got the latest and greatest questions on there. Of course, I got to put in my password. Bear with me here. All right, scroll down. Yep. All right, so yes, Greg T is the first and only question so far. So like I said, if you got questions, post them in there. So Greg T says, hi Q, does keeping your left shoulder back on the downswing help shallow the club? I mean, technically, I guess it would, but that's not really what you would want to do. You don't want to keep your shoulder back. You definitely want to rotate your shoulders back, toward the target. I think that can be a good feel. I'll talk about that here in a second. So let me clear this out of the way. Like I said, I was doing a lesson, lost track of time. I was showing them how to do a drill on the blue brick. If anybody has any questions about the blue brick, feel free to ask. If you're not familiar with it, it's just a training aid that Clay invented. Getting lots of great feedback on it from people that are using it. So what Greg is talking about is basically kind of this, right? Well, yeah, the club. Well, technically, this isn't going to shallow the club. It can help you to swing more from the inside, right? So when we say shallowing the club, really what's happening there is the mass of the club head is trailing the force that you're putting into it with the hands, right? So that's shallowing out the club, right? So I can have my shoulders, go to the top, my shoulders here, and then I can go like that, right? And that's not shallowing out the club. Now, would you really do that? Of course not. But technically, this isn't going to make you shallow out the club. It can help you swing more from the inside. But again, we don't technically want to swing like that. Now, if you're someone who goes to the top and your first move from the top is to go like that, right? And that's an over-the-top swing, then that feel, I think, can be beneficial to help you to get your arms to work down. But really what we want is we want our shoulders to rotate and our arms to work down, right? We don't want to rotate and leave our arms up. We want to, our arms to go down as we rotate down to the ball, right? So you almost want to feel like your lead arm is going like this, like it's your upper arm here is kind of sliding down your pec. That's kind of what you want to feel like when you're coming down, right? That's going to help you to get the club shallowing out. Because if you just keep your back to the target and not rotate your shoulders and throw your arms down, it's going to be hard to really get to the ball and hit functional golf shots. So what you're talking about there is probably more of a feel for maybe people that really unwind and throw the club out over the top. It's not literally what you want to do, but it can be a good feel for those people. It's not usually a feel that I have people do. Like I said, if you're someone who's coming over the top, the best way to fix an over the top is with constraints-led instruction, or constraints-led drills, right? So what is constraints-led drills? That's doing stuff with the blue brick. So like I said, the blue brick, this is training aid that Clay invented, and you can do shallowing drills with it. So if you're struggling with an over-the-top and shallowing, get yourself a blue brick. If you're interested in a blue brick, you can go to the resources tab on the website, and you can pick one up. Where did those sticks go? There they are. So if I'm working on shallowing, right, instead of that feel, which is not technically something that you want to do, then what I would do is I put a stick in the shallowing, the appropriate shallowing for the slot for the club that you're using. I got a wedge right here. There's a wedge, a 6-iron, and a driver slot. So I put it in the wedge slot since I have a wedge here. There's also a hole that is in the side of the blue brick here that you would lay this stick on the ground, put it in that hole, and have that stick pointing toward the target. My wall is in the way here, so I'm just going to lay it on the ground, flush up against the blue brick here. And it's basically doing the same thing. So now what I would start out with is no ball, and I would set up as if there's a golf ball about a club head inside of the stick. And now I'm just going to make swings where I got to swing underneath this stick. I'm just going to start out nice and slow. Probably going to go to the top. I'm going to pause, come down nice and slow, make sure that I'm able to do it, get comfortable, more comfortable with doing that. And then I might try to take away the pause, still going nice and slow. I would try to get to where you can do a full speed practice swing where you don't disturb the stick. And just start slow and build your way up. If it's easy for you to do, then you'll be able to build up very, very quickly. A big mistake that I often see golfers make is they just put the golf ball down, go full speed, and they just whack the stick right away. And they're like, I can't swing underneath the stick. Well, you can. You just have to slow down a little bit, get more comfortable with swinging underneath the stick, and then go from there. All right. So once you get comfortable, full speed, swinging underneath the stick, if you're on turf, I would actually, consider clipping a tee next, right, or something like that before you add the golf ball. If you're off a mat or something like that, that's totally fine too. Do the golf ball again, club head inside the stick. Start out slow, build your way up, and do full. You can start out with half swings, build up to full swings. You can start out with half speed. So what that means is, let's say for me, I'm using a wedge. Let's say that this wedge is my 100-yard club, right? Well, I could hit shots with this wedge, full swing shots, but half speed. That would mean that I'm taking a full swing, but the ball is only going like 50 yards, right? So I'm not hitting it with enough speed to get it to go the full, but I'm still taking a full length swing. So there's pros and cons to both, but you can do it either way. But that's how I would do it. The reason why this is so effective and why I recommend this over random, technical advice and things like that is because when you put this here, you're shallowing out the club and doing what the way that you best know how to do it, right? You're doing it in the way that comes most naturally to you. And that is the best way to do it because there's lots of ways to shallow out the club. There's lots of things that shallow out the club, right? We can shallow out the club with wrist angles. We can shallow out the club with arm rotation. We can shallow out the club with the shoulder joints. We can shallow out the club with our spine angle, with our spine bending. We can shallow out the club with the arms lowering. We could shallow out the club with early extension. Now, this makes it difficult to do that difficult to do it excessively, that is, right? So if I go up to the top of the swing and then I just go like that, well, look, I'm going to hit my hands on this, or I'm going to hit the club on it, right? Because my hands, I may be shallowing out the club, but the club's going to be out over this, right? So this is the vertical swing plane that we want to have for a wedge. So this forces me to kind of get on or near that vertical swing plane that the pros are on, right? So that's really what it comes down to. So like I said, this kind of training I have found to be the best because it makes you do it in your way, because you can max out all those things that I talked about. Bow your wrist as much as you can, forearm roll, turn the doorknob to the right as much as you possibly can. External rotation in the trail arm, internal rotation in the lead arm as much as you possibly can. As much spine angle and spine tilt. If you do all those things, you're going to be hitting the ground way behind the golf ball because the club's going to be way too shallow if you max out all those things, right? So you don't need to do all of those things. It's about your own special recipe of how you shallow out the club, and this allows you to have your own special recipe, right? To have your own way of doing it. So that's really the best way, is to do it the way that comes most naturally to you. If you're trying to do it in a way that is very unnatural to you, it's going to require a lot of training to make that natural to you. But if you just come out and do it in the way that feels the most natural to you, you will be able to succeed much faster, right? So that's why I recommend that. So if you're interested in the blue brick, you click the resources page. But that's how I'd work on shallowing, as opposed to trying to get a bunch of, trying random feels that may or may not work. And then also, if they do work, might feel very now, if you try that and you shallow out the club and that feels very natural to you and everything's great, then great. That's just not usually what happens. All right. Keep questions coming. Greg T says, do you have a certain swing thought to shallow out the club? No. Like I said, that's how you want to shallow out the club. And again, even if I did, my swing thoughts are relative to the golfer, right? So a swing thought that may help me may not help you, right? And vice versa. So I don't really have a swing thought to shallow out the club because it's something that I do naturally. You know, I'm not thinking about shallowing out the club. It's just something that naturally happens in my swing. Ideally, you would have 0 swing thoughts. Ideally, it would be see target, visualize the shot, make the swing that matches what you're trying to do, and then the ball matches that. That's ideally. That's what's called being in the zone, right? You know, that's an area where you want to get to. That's ideally where you would be. Now, the only time you'd really want to introduce swing thoughts is if that is not happening, right? You're not getting the ball flight and everything that you are expecting. And it is relative to the skill level, right? So if you are, you know, a higher handicap golfer, you need to have more tolerance, right, for what it is. You know, the higher level golfer you are, the tighter that needs to be, and you may have swing thoughts to go with that, but there is a relative amount of tolerance that you need to have on that. So if it doesn't, you know, if you're a 15 handicap golfer and you're going for a draw that starts a little bit right of the target and then it just like overdraws a little bit, like let's say you're going for a 2-yard draw and it draws 5 yards, that's still an amazing golf shot. That's not an area where I'm closing the face too much. You know, it's not that's not really what I'm talking about. So swing thoughts are relative to the golfer. Here's my rule on swing thoughts. Swing thoughts, you can only have one at a time, right? So I've talked to people and they tell me, here's what I'm working on. And they tell me like a laundry list of things. And I'm like, are you trying to do that all like during your swing? Like, yeah, like that's impossible. No wonder you can't hit the ball because you're trying to think too internally about everything that's going on. So that's why my rule with swing thoughts, if you want to be successful with swing thoughts, is it has to directly improve your ball flight or contact. So let me give you an example. Let's say that, you know, I'm out there, I'm doing, you know, I'm trying my C target, visualize the shot, and just trying to feel what I'm trying to do. I'm not really having swing thoughts. I'm just swinging the club in the way that it's hopefully going to fit the picture that I've drawn in my mind of this, right? So, so let's say that I'm doing that, but I keep chunking it. I just keep chunking it, hitting it heavy. I'm leaving everything, anywhere from getting it halfway there to 20 yards short because I'm just chunking it a certain amount. So at that point, I might introduce a swing thought, and a good swing thought typically for that is the first thing I would typically do is try to make an adjustment in the setup, typically, as opposed to a swing thought, because making an adjustment in your setup is typically a lot easier. So the first thing I would probably do is move the ball back in my stance a little bit. That's probably the first thing that I would do. And if I'm still chunking it from there, it's usually like a weight shift, right? So I might be like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm finishing with all my weight over here. And when I finish, I want to finish where all my weight's over here and I can just tap my toe, right? If that swing thought is helpful, to make sure that I'm kind of finishing the swing all the way on my lead side. And to make sure I'm not faking it too, because I've seen that before where I'll tell somebody that and they'll go like this and then they'll go like that. Like that's not what I'm talking about. We want to make sure that I'm getting here and then I'm coming all the way around, and that's going to help you to most likely move the bottom of the swing forward, and usually will lead to better striking. So you can see how that is a directly a swing thought. I don't like swing thoughts where it's like you're just, you saw a video on YouTube where it says keep your left arm straight, and then you just go out there, I'm going to keep my left arm straight today, right? I don't like that because one, it's not necessary. You don't have to keep your left arm straight. That is not There are definitely plenty of great golfers that don't have their left arm straight. That's neither here nor there, but that's just, you're just introducing an unnecessary swing thought that may not even be necessary, and you're taking away from your focus on the things that matter the most. What does it take to hit a good golf shot? It takes ball first contact, center face contact, a relatively square face, and in a relatively square neutral path down to the ball if you want to hit the ball straight, right? And then some speed behind it. That's what it takes to hit a good golf shot. If you do those four things and you hit the ball with some speed, you will, if you can do that consistently, you can be a good golfer, right? So when you are introducing random swing thoughts that focus on a piece of the body, you're thinking internally about what your body's doing instead of thinking externally about what the club is doing with the ball, because that's really what matters. The golf ball doesn't care if your left arm straight. It doesn't care about anything other than impact. That's all it cares about, and what you are delivering to the ball with the club. That's what it cares about. So any swing thought that you have has to be to directly improve those factors. So hopefully that makes sense with the swing thoughts. If you just introduce random swing thoughts, then you'll likely start not. Now, sometimes you might, I'm not saying that every time you do that, it's going to be bad news, but it's typically going to be, it's not going to be great more often than not, typically. All right. We got about 40 minutes left if we have more questions. All right. So I just had some notes on a lesson I was doing. So, yeah, well, you guys are coming up with questions. I'm just going to be working on the stuff I got to do. So, It's working, Alyssa. This always works, by the way. Support team, you're on here. It always works. So I don't usually if somebody. So you probably saw in the chat there was a test from Alyssa. Alyssa is one of our awesome support team members. So if you have issues with the website or anything like that, you're going to be getting in contact with Alyssa or some of the other lovely ladies on our team. My mom is one of them as well. But yeah, so every now and then I'll see the support team get on here and they'll do a little test, and it always works. So usually if someone's having issues on here, it's because they're not getting on office hours at the right time, or something like that. It's typically what it is. So, I answer all the questions that are on here. You just got to be on here at the right time to see the answer. And if you miss your answer, then all you have to do is go to the archived office hours to see them. If you're interested in seeing past office hours, all the office hours are archived, I think, up to the last 500, because that's the max that you can put on a playlist, I think, for YouTube. So if you're interested in checking that out, the archived office hours, all you have to do is go to the office hours highlights page. So that's instruction tab. And then from the drop down from the instruction tab, I think it's toward the bottom, you'll see office hours. And then if you hover your cursor over that expands another menu that I think there's two options there. It's either the office hours page, which is the page that you're on, that you would be on here if you're watching this live. And then there's the office hours highlights page. So you select the office hours highlights page, and then you scroll down to the bottom of the office hours highlights page, and you'll see the archived office hours. I wish we had an easier way of getting to it. I wish we had just one page and not all the highlights. I wish we had just like another page that was archived office hours where you could go find it. But basically, it just works just like a YouTube playlist. If you've been on YouTube, you've seen like the playlists that are on there. We just have the playlist kind of embedded in the web page, so you can scroll through the last however many office hours, and you can watch any of them. So if you happen to ask a question and you have to take off, then you can always watch the archived office hours later. All right. So Cal Bear says, can you please describe the path of the club on the backswing and downswing as it relates to the shallow line from the hosel through the bottom of the elbow? Specifically, should the club stay on the line on the backswing until it gets closer to the top? Should the club stay on the line or under the line on the downswing, or is it better to be under the line? I assume under the line would promote more of a draw. Your thoughts? So we've actually kind of tweaked that line a little bit. So what you mentioned was from the hosel up through the point of the elbow, and it's actually different now. We do through the ball, where the ball is sitting, through the middle of the elbow is where that shallowing line is. And it is only accurate, folks, if you have a good camera angle. If you do not use the proper camera angle, it will not be accurate. You may as well not even bother drawing it on there and looking at it, because it's just not going to be accurate. So to make sure that it's accurate, you want to make sure that you're set up down the toe line. Very easy way to do that. Alignment stick or club, put it on the ground, point it at a target, then get your camera. Let me actually move this. There we go. Then you want to get your camera and line it up to where this is straight up and down vertical on the screen. Here's a little trick to make sure it's straight up and down vertical on the screen. Take another alignment stick, let it just hang straight down. So if that's hanging straight down due to gravity, that's going to be straight up and down vertical, right? So you can see that stick that I have on the ground isn't, it's pretty close, but it's not perfectly matching this stick. So I would actually kind of move it around a little bit to where it matches it. There. So now you can see that stick that's on the ground is perfectly matching this straight up and down vertical stick. And it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you can see there that that's pretty much matching it straight up and down. I mean, I can put it, if I move it right over, I can put it right over and actually kind of hide it, right? If you can do that, then that's about perfect. If it's slightly off, not that big a deal, right? So that's the first piece. You want to set up the camera right down the toe line. The height of the camera, you want it to be at hip level. If it's too high, it's going to be off, right? Do not hand your phone to somebody and have them record your swing for two reasons. One, they're going to hold it up here. No one ever holds it down here. Everyone's going to hold it up here. And they're going to be moving around. Even if they have the hands of a steady hand of a surgeon, they're still going to be it's still going to be moving around a little bit, and it's going to make your line move around a little bit when you draw it on the analyzation. So use like a phone tripod or something like that. If you already have like a tripod, you can just buy the foam mount that goes on top of it. Very, very simple. You can get them on Amazon pretty cheap. You can get it Amazon. You can get a tripod with the foam mount included for less than $20. I've seen. You can definitely pay more, but you can get them for less than $20 for sure. This doesn't need to be a big expensive thing. It's just holding a phone. They all kind of work the same. And then if you already have a tripod, you can, for usually less than $10, you can get the thing that will hold the camera. I don't know. I thought might be in my garage because I was using it. Yeah, I have one for an iPad because that's usually what I use. Because I just like to have the bigger screen as opposed to a phone when I'm practicing. So they make ones for iPads too if you want to use an iPad. They're a little bit more expensive, like $20, but they're bigger, so that's why. But I think that it can also hold your phone, so it kind of does two things. So down the toe line here, hip level, and then you want to have the camera far away enough from you that you and the club stay in the frame throughout the entire swing. So that's what we want. So now when you go to set up, now I'll tell you right now, this camera angle that you're seeing right here is not correct. It is set up down the toe line that we saw. It's too high and it's too close. So don't take this as a gauge of what it should look like because I can't move the camera. So when you go to hit the ball, you just want to make sure that your toes are up there equally distant from the stick. So you can't set up like this because that's not set up down the toe line. Your toe line's this way. So you want your toe line to match the stick on the ground and be within an inch or two of the stick. If you have it there, then you're going to have a good camera angle. You're going to have an accurate shallowing line. All right. So this is part of the reason why a lot of people hate on mats. You just have to use mats. I like mats because this makes it a lot easier to work on your swing and film your swing and see what's going on. Because if I make divots and I can't hit a ball in a certain place, or I can't find a good lie where I need the ball to be, it's a pain in the neck. So I like having a mat because it's always going to be a good lie. I'm just going to make sure I practice on a mat the way that's going to give me the feedback I want. Masking tape. Get some masking tape. Place a strip of tape an inch behind the ball, and you'll know if you're chunking it or not if you hit that tape. Very, very quick tip there for working on mats, because that's really the only bad thing about hitting off of mats is that you can chunk the ball on it and it won't really tell you. But if you use the tape, you'll know. So that's why I recommend you do that. So now you draw the line from the ball up to the middle of the elbow here, and that's your shallowing line, right? So as far as how the club should interact with that shallowing line in the backswing, does not matter. Does not matter. You can go on YouTube and search all your favorite tour player swings. You're going to see all kinds of different places and you don't really even need the shallowing line to be there. And you can see, oh yeah, just look in relationship to the hands. You'll see some players, look at like a Matt Wolff, for example. Matt Wolff, way up here. That club goes way outside that shallowing line, right? Look like a Raymond Floyd, way inside, right? And then you look at Tiger, who's pretty much right in line with it. So the backswing shallowing line, how the club interacts with it, it really doesn't matter. It only matters on the downswing. That's it. It only matters on the downswing. Now, the backswing can matter if it affects how it comes down the downswing. So I don't change backswings that much, to be honest, like takeaways and stuff, because it's not really, the ball does not care how you bring it away from it. It only cares about how you return it back to it. That's what it cares about. So the only time I really mess with a takeaway or anything like that is, or as far as like inside or outside or anything like that. Now I've messed with takeaways in the sense of wider takeaways. If you're just picking it up straight with your wrists, that's typically not going to be good. Typically going to lead to bad things in the swing. Usually, not always, but it often does, right? But I typically don't. If somebody has an inside or outside takeaway, as long as that club is coming down the way that we want to, then it's great. As far as how that club should interact with it coming down, generally just underneath the line is good. Just underneath that line is good. But really anywhere near the line is going to get you really, really close. So if you're going straight down that line, you're going to be really, really close. A lot of it depends on how you come through the ball, because I can have that club working. I don't know if I want to get into that. Kind of complicates things, but I'm not going to make it complicated because I don't think it's necessary for what we're doing here. If you're anywhere, if basically just underneath the line would be good. If you're too far underneath the line, then your path can get too much into out. If you're too much over the line, then your path can get too much out to in, right? Your ball flight is typically going to tell you if you're too much over or under. So if you're hitting blocks, if you have kind of like a two-way miss where you're hitting blocks out to the right and hooks to the left for a right-handed golfer, your path's probably too much from the inside, right? What causes both of those is a path that's from the inside. The block is from the face being in line with that path, right? And the hook is from the face being too close to that path. And then if your best shots are kind of heavy draws, then your path is probably too much from the inside. You're too much underneath the line. You probably want to work to get more closer to that line. A good drill to do is with the blue brick. Basically, the opposite is shallowing with the brick, set up to where it's on the inside of your swing. You got to swing over the stick, and that can help you to kind of neutralize that. So that's really, really what it comes down to. But as far as how it works up, doesn't matter. How it works down matters. As long as you're very close to that line, you'll be in pretty good shape. If you want to hit draws, you definitely want to be underneath it. If you want to hit fades, you can be underneath it, but you have to come through. You have to really pull the handle to the left through impact to get that path to be a little bit more to the left. But generally, you don't really ever want to be above it very much because that's going to tend to lead to kind of an over the top, a little bit steep. So, but that's how you want to interact with that line. But everybody's a little bit different, as far as where it needs to be. A lot of it depends on how you're coming through impact, how much your hands kind of turn the corner, what you're doing in your swing. If you have a lot of early extension in your swing, then your hands don't really turn the corner. They just kind of flatten out as you come through. So that path, you probably don't want to be too much underneath that line, because if you're too much underneath that line and then you do that, and your path is just going to end up too much from the inside. So, if you're someone who early extends, you probably want to have that club pretty much on that line, because that's going to because your hand path isn't working back to the inside. It's kind of leveling out as you're coming through. All right. So Charlie has a question here. It says, "Hi Q, I just watched the video of your drill developing lag. So even without any wrist cock in your backswing, you can still have good lag at impact." So that's an exaggeration, right? Is really what it is. It's an exaggeration. And if you've seen the video, basically it's a video where a big reason why a lot of people don't have lag is because they try to create it in the backswing. So the moment you fully hinge your wrist, that's the moment that you want to release it. So if you fully hinge your wrist before you get up to the top, you're going to release it from the top, right? So the idea of the drill is we're going to have no hinge, and I would actually feel like you have no hinge coming down as well, and then you create the lag as late as possible. Because most people, even if they do what I'm talking about, they won't create the hinge. So it's really a feel. It's not technically what's happening. It's basically the old. It's a play on the old drill, the wide, narrow, wide drill. So what that means is I'm going to bring the club head out wide, and then I'm going to narrow it in the downswing, and then I'm going to be wide in the fall through. Well, what I've observed, because I used to prescribe that drill because when I did it, it kind of helped me a little bit. So I used to prescribe that drill to students, and every time I give it to students, they just wouldn't do it right. They would always bring it up here and then throw it out, and it would just be the same. But then I realized that a lot of times when people do that drill, they feel like they're doing wide, narrow, wide, but in reality, they're doing wide to here, and then they narrow it as they get up to the top, and then it's just the timing of the wide, narrow, wide is off, and it's just their feel of what's going on. So to counteract that, what I would wanted students to feel a little bit is more wide, and then I want them to even feel wide in the downswing, so that way there is no narrowing it at the top. So it's wide, and then narrow as we're coming down. So we're creating that angle. I wanted to make sure that students were creating the angle, the lag angle in the downswing and not the backswing. So that wide, narrow, wide drill is a good drill to kind of help you to do that, to get the feeling of that. All right, we got about not quite 20 minutes left here. Got any more questions? If not, no big deal. So Charlie goes on to say, so then the only purpose of your wrist cock is to create more distance between your club head and the ball. No, it's to get the club to load properly, because people load the club too soon, right? The purpose of the drill is for people, if you look at your golf, this is who the drill is really for. Now, I'm not saying it can't be helpful for people that aren't doing this, but the drill is really helpful for people who bring the club up to the top. It's fully hinged at the top, and then they throw basically the angle between their lead arm and the shaft is sharpest at the top, and then it gets bigger as they come down. That's who the drill is for, and that's most people who tend to cast the club. So if you're struggling with lag and you're casting the club and you're creating a sharper angle at the sharpest angle at the top, and then you create a bigger angle as you come down, then that drill will be really helpful for you. It's not about what you said, more distance between your club head, and it's not about that. It's about loading the club, loading the club better. If you load the club too early, you're going to unload it too early. So it's about loading it up. Basically the lead arm parallel position, or a little bit later, that's when you look at the best players. That's when they have the sharpest angle between the lead arm and the shaft. That's when the sharpest angle is. Most recreational golfers, that sharpest angle is up here, and then they kind of throw it out as they come down. Most of the best players, they're here, right? And then when they come down, it creates more angle, and then it lets go. Or you'll see some players who they're here, and then the angle more or less kind of stays the same, and then they let it go. But that sharpest angle, it is at least maintained or created by that lead arm parallel position in the downswing. When you look at most of the best golfers, that's what we call the maximum lag position, the position in the golf swing when you have the most amount of lag. That's usually about lead arm parallel when you look at the best players. Some players are a little bit later. A lot of the players who have a ton of lag, like Sergio Garcia, Ben Hogan, it's a little bit later for them. So most golfers, it's here. Those guys, it might be like right here, a little bit later, but it's around that lead arm parallel position. Recreational golfers, it's typically up here. Is where that happens, and then it's throwing it out from there. And that can lead to burning up the speed a little bit early. It can lead to an early release, which you lose some compression on the ball when you do that. It can lead to all that stuff. So Charlie goes on to say, thanks, Q. So it seems it boils down to the timing of your release. You want it to be late rather than early. It really just depends. When you look at, if I'm not sure if you're familiar with or watch the videos in the top speed golf system, but the last piece of the top speed golf system is the straight line release, and Clay talks about 45 degrees in front is where you want the release to be. It's give or take. There's an acceptable range. When we studied all the major winners from the last like 30 years, plus like all-time greats like Arnold Palmer and stuff like that, we found that the acceptable range was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 27 to 55 degrees. So if you're in that area with your release, then you are in the area of where at least some golfers have been to win a major championship. So golfers have beat the best golfers in the world in a 4-day period, right? So so an example would be like Martin Keimer. I know he was like closer to that 27 degrees, so a little bit of an earlier release. He was kind of on the low end. And then like a Dustin Johnson, he's like 55 degrees. He'd be like on the high end. And then someone who's like in between, like the average, we found the average to be like 40, 41 degrees of the release. So that would be someone like a Justin Rose was in that category of like 41 degrees. So, we say Clay says 45 degrees because he knew it was about that is where he sees, a lot of the best players. That's just kind of what it looks like to the naked eye. And also it's an easy angle to visualize, right? I think most people can visualize a 45 degree angle pretty easily. So, and when we talk about the release or when Clay talks about it, this is kind of a buzzword in golf. So there are other instructors that use this word in a different way than what we use it. So when you're hearing top speed golf talk about the release, what we're talking about is when the club splits the forearms, right? That's the release. So when the club splits the forearms, that's the point of the release of the club, right? That's all we're talking about there. We're not talking about the club face being more open or closed or anything like that. We're talking about where the club is splitting the forearms, right? So this would be like an early release. So if you're coming into contact and that club is splitting your forearms at impact, that would be like a 0 degree release, right? So this would be not release, not release, not release, not release, release. And you can see that's roughly about 45 degrees out in front. So that's when you're going to look at the best players. And again, you can go to YouTube, search face on, slow motion, and insert your favorite golfer's name, right? And you'll see kind of what I'm talking about there. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left here.
All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks, everyone, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all next time.